So let's get started. I'm going to talk about architectural thinking, but particularly I will apply it to Flutter state management. State management in any application is very controversial topic, right? So different people have different opinion, and many people are looking for like the best state management, right? Let's get into it and see how I chose an state management for my application. If I can get my clicker to work. It seems I'm not able to do that. Okay. Just a second. All right. So as we know that when we start a project, so very soon, very quickly, we get into a very complex problem in the application, and that is managing the state. And we're coming up with a lot of, um, solution for this particular problem. And this is very common in any application, including mobile application, whether you're doing native or with any type of framework, including Flutter. So today, what I'm going to talk about is first, we're going to go through the architectural thinking, what really is, and how architects think. And I will review some Flutter state management packages, and I apply some architectural characteristic to these packages, the way that I analyze them, and then I will choose an state management at the end for one particular application that I have in my slides. This is like a personal or like an experience that I had recently. So let me introduce myself. My name is Majid Hajian. I am a software engineer. I've been working as a solution architect and software architect for the last 2 years almost in Telia, Norway. And I'm a Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart. Apart from this, I'm also doing a lot of tutorial creation, content creation, book, and stuff like that. And I'm also a community leader, particularly in Nordic countries. All right, architectural thinking. Well, the architectural thinking is, the definition is not very hard. It's like thinking with a purpose. You want to solve a complex problem. You are coming with some solution for an issue, or you want to just maybe make a very hard or difficult decision. These are all like, the way that we may call it architectural thinking. But then, before I get more into it, let me tell you that if you have not done any type of architecture or software architecture, I will encourage you to read this book, which is a very nice book, have been published maybe 2-3 years ago. And it's going through the basics of software architecture, the fundamentals. And many of the ideas that I'm actually today presenting, it's from this book as well. In this book is mentioned that the architectural thinking, the trades-off, the architecture trades-off is one of the factors that architects usually take into account. And that is, the trades-off is like, you need to understand, as an architect, you need to analyze and you need to recognize all the trades-off that is associated with some problem that you are going to fix. So, well, if you always ask an architect like, this is better or that is better, you will always get a very boring answer, right? And that is, it depends. And this is the way that architects think. They always see different things based on the trades-off. So they always analyze very quickly, even in life. When I get into this job, like these days, even when I'm talking to my wife, I'm always, it really depends. Let me think, maybe this is better or that one. I don't know, let's think about it. There is always a trade-off for everything. This is the way that architects usually think, right? And apart from that, architects also need to take into account the business drives. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to build a software, an application that is serving and delivering some business values. Otherwise, then why we are creating that software, right? And I added also here the team drive because we're going to talk about one particular problem in application management, and that is state management. So that's why I'm also adding team drives. So it's important that if you are thinking to choose a solution for a problem for your application, take into account how teams are happy with that problem, with that solution. And at the end, it's also mentioned about the breadth of knowledge. So as an architect, or all of you are kind of like an architect, even if the role that you are working these days is not an architect role. You've been probably part of this role from time to time when you're building an application. When I'm saying an architect, I don't mean like you have to have a role. It can be a mindset only, right? But what you need to do is that you need to always keep the breadth of knowledge. You need to know the stuff that you don't know. That is very important. You know, you're very expert on some topics, but you still need to expand your area of those topics that you need to know. And there are always stuff that you don't know at all. You don't know, you don't know. So, let me give you a real example in life. A couple of weeks ago, after all of these restrictions was a little bit laid off and I could travel, so I was thinking when I get into an airplane, it was like after 2 years of not traveling, it was like refreshing. I was like a very frequent traveler, and 2 years of break for me was like a massive stop. So I need to think again about the airplanes when I wanted to get into it. And the first thing actually it came in my head was like, why these airplanes, most of the airplanes or aircraft that I'm seeing, they have these engines below the wings. In fact, I made a little bit of research, and I found that there are some type of airplanes that they have engine on top. Some of them have embedded. Some of them have like in front, and maybe different types. Then I realized that, well, there must be some trades-off to choose like why these engines are in different places. The last two ones are not very common. We always see the engines are, especially for passengers, aircrafts, they're always below the wings. But let's get into it. I made a little bit of research. So the question was, why engines are below this? Or which one is better? So after a little bit of research, I realized that there are different factors, as I said, trades-off. But I want to particularly talk about 3 of them at least, and compare these aircrafts. One of them was safety. First of all, I learned that in many aircrafts, the fuel tank is in the wings, apparently. And when you have these engines below the aircraft, because it's further away from the tank, in case of any fire or any problem to the engine, it's less dangerous. While when it's embedded, it's more dangerous. It can be a catastrophic when there is a fire, but in the other hand, it gives you more aerodynamic. But we get into that. So it's also a little bit further from the cabin, so apparently that's also a good reason that they put this engine below. There is another reason is that because the way that the wings works, the mechanic of the wings, which I'm not going to talk about it. So when you have the engines below the wings, it gives you an opportunity to have bigger engines and much more powerful engines. So, and last one is because it's closer to the ground, the engine, when it's below the wing, the maintenance is way easier because you can get access to it very easy. But then at this point, I said, oh, then these are the reasons. So obviously, the engine below the wings is better, right? Or isn't it? There are other factors too. As I said, like when the engines are embedded, they give you they give a better aerodynamic apparently. Or when the engines are on top, they give there is a term in aviation called STOL, and that is like short takeoffs and landing. And when the engines are on top, that gives a much better performance to the aircraft. And well, because if the engines are like, for example, on top, because they are like further away from the ground, they just absorb less dust and, you know, maybe some rubbish and stuff. So it's like better in terms of the lifespan of the engine, but the maintenance is harder. So now the question is, based on these factors, which one is better? Should the architect choose like the engine below the wings or on top or embed or different ways? Well, the answer is it really depends, right? If the safety and maybe the maintenance is more important, then probably engine below the wings is better. And that's why maybe most of the passenger aircraft have this engine below. And in some cases, when short landing and takeoff is more important, then we see in some areas that aircraft have an engine on top. This is the time that we say everything is a trade-off, right? There is no obvious answer to it. Another thing that I mentioned was the breadth of knowledge. Very quickly, let's touch upon it. It is very important always you have this expansion of knowledge. You don't need to be expert in everything. I don't need to be expert in everything. But it's good for me to know, especially those things that I'm working with and may affect my work and my decision. And that is the stuff that I should know I don't know. And maybe at some point I will get into it and learn it. That's technical breadth. So let me give you an example. Triple pattern. How many of you have heard about this? If you are a Flutter developer, I ask actually this question from Flutter developers as well, and almost no one knew this term, which is, that is the part that I'm talking about, expanding the breadth of knowledge. So in fact, this is the last state management pattern, which is in the, shown on the options documentation under state management in Flutter website. So by just reading that documentation, you at least know there is a triple patterns, you know, state management, but you don't need to be expert on that. At least you know there is such a thing. But now let's get started. Let's talk about choosing state management, particularly for a Flutter application. Well, when we are talking about a state, this is very, as I said, very controversial topic, for sure. But it's also very fun to work with, especially in Flutter, because like JavaScript frameworks and JavaScript world, there are lots of different ways that you can manage your state in an application, in a mobile application. I had one example here. I wanted to build an application, my MJ Coffee app. This application was fairly simple. It had maybe 5, 6 screens, and I had a list of coffees, and I wanted to log in, like allow my users or customers to log in and then get the list and add to cart some coffees and just check out, and that's pretty much it. Very simple application. And I wanted to choose an state management for my application. All right, so I had different options. First, in the beginning, I said, should I have the states in each screen, or should I manage them like per screen, or should I just manage them in one single source? Well, of course, it depends, right? But let me walk you through the steps. When you have states, all right, the most important question here is that who needs this state, or which screen needs this state? Is this just used by one widget? In Flutter, everything is a widget, so and a screen is also a widget. So do I need to manage this state in one screen? Or is this an state that I will actually spread out in the application? Like many screens need that, or maybe all the screens need that. There are two terms here. When you want to share this a state for many screens or all screens, and that is app state. And when you are going to use only a state for one particular screen, and that is going to be a ephemeral state. What we're going to talk here is that we're going to actually talk about app state. We will see how we can manage app state, because ephemeral state, then it's only for one screen. Don't bother to just make things complicated. Handle it in one screen with built-in feature in Flutter. That's it. There is nothing wrong to use whatever is built into the framework. So in fact, when I read the documentation on the Flutter website, I found out around 10 state management, at least shown on the documentation. Well, that is a little bit now getting things complicated. I have so many options. Then which one should I choose? Which one is better? Then naturally what you want to do, you want to go and research and find out about more state management, reading some article, and you want to see like which one is better. Like, should I use this? Especially if you are newcomer to the Flutter, like let's say, ecosystem, then you might want to understand or get an answer very quickly. Well, I made a research as well. I'm not new to the Flutter ecosystem. I've been with Flutter for the last 4 years at least. So it was not quite new to me, but still I have the same issues. I still wanted to find out which state management is better. And every day we have a new package. And this is one of the charts that we see in Flutter ecosystem. One of the friends in Flutter community, Mike, he is creating this type of chart, which is showing a list of state management. And well, it's also organizing in different way. For example, based on the ranks or the likes, you see a state management from top to bottom. And in this case, I have 30 state management, even more. Now things even more complicated when I searched. All right, then which one is better? Should I go through this list and go to the top and say, oh, okay, I should choose the first one because it has the most like and probably is the best. Is it the case? If a project on GitHub has a lot of more star rather than another project, does it mean that project is better for my application? I don't know. It depends. As an architect, I think it this way. This is the architectural thinking. You think with purpose. You don't choose right away based on one fact. And let's move on. So when I read this list, at least the first thing I could do by reading the documentation, by reading some sample codes, like maybe an hour or so, just spending some time, I realized that I can actually categorize this state management. This can be applied in any application that you work with, right? So I could simply categorize it into 3. So there are some state management, there are some packages, patterns that are based or built on top of Flutter features. So Flutter comes with built-in features such as set of states, such as inherited widget, and etc., etc. So some packages make them a little bit easier, and they provide you a new wrapper that is easier to work with, such as Riverpod, Provider, and other packages. The names are not really important at this point. The fact here is that I could categorize them. Then there are some packages that come in with built-in feature in Dart that is stream or observable in other languages, and that applies the reactive programming basics. So then I could categorize some of those features. I could say, yeah, I have some packages such as Mobex, Blocks, Qubit, and etc. They are stream-based. They are like applying the reactive programming. This is a good indication right now for me, because if my application is using a lot of real-time data transformation, if my application is like using streams heavily, maybe I should start looking in this category, not other categories. So another one was the functional programming approaches, like the concept of pure function, immutable object, and etc., etc. So then some packages such as Redux or Async Redux, they also coming from like maybe different language ecosystem like JavaScript. And by looking at all these packages, I realized that, okay, then if I want to go for the functional programming approaches, probably in my application, probably I should look at this category. But this is not enough, right? I need to narrow down these 30 packages to smaller lists that I can compare. I can't sit and compare 30 packages. I want maybe 5 or at least 6 and then choose between them. Okay, what I did was I said, okay, I have some facts here. Some of them are like general, and some of them are based on my team's desire. For example, we really want to use a package that is widely used. Like, of course, GitHub stars and likes and pubs or etc. It's important. So narrowing down the list a little bit. So if there is like a package that it's not very widely used, then it's off the list at least. Still, it's a lot of them. So another thing is that the team says we want a very good documentation. By looking at the repo, by looking at their website, it's very easy to understand if they are coming with a good documentation or not, or narrowing down the list a little bit more. So here is the criteria. Another thing was, do we really want to have state management is solving one problem, and that is managing a state, but do we want a package that provides several things as well? Like, do we want a package that does dependency injection as well as a state management, as well as a route management, and etc.? No. The team said, yeah, let's actually have the Linux or the Unix mindset, right? Do one thing and do it very good. Find a package that is just doing one thing, but is doing that very, very well. All right, that gets even easier. So we crossed off some of the other packages here. And another one was, like the team said, well, another criteria here is that you need to have a code coverage above at least 70%. We want to use a package, we want to invest on this package, but then suddenly, if we understand that this package doesn't have a test in the application, then we're not very confident. And looking at the repository, it must be very active repository, quite frequently releases or things like that. All right, this is good. But now I could narrow down my list. So now I need to talk to developers as well as business owners. So here is a chart. Usually architects, they really like the elitist words. Like they say scalability, they say extensibility, or etc. These elitist words are very, very like nice to the architect's hearing. But does it really convey the message of the word to the business owners, like for example, product owner in the team or the developers? May not. We need to translate. We need to come up with a language that both teams and the business side understand. Here is some examples. For example, the architect characteristic. I wanted to compare at least 6 or 7 of these characteristics between these packages. All right. So for example, scalability is one of them. But what really means for product owner or for Flutter developers? It means that, well, does this package has a lot of boilerplate code? Should I maintain that? Does it take a lot of time to maintain? Or if I want to add, and it's very common in an enterprise that they buy or merge, different companies, smaller ones or big ones, and then suddenly you need to merge something into your application. Can we really actually quickly merge something, adding more features? All right. So having some common language here. Or agility, we're talking about like how fast we can work with this application or with this package. The team, as well as for the business side, the agility means like how fast, if you choose, like this is one of the important decisions for the application, right? If you choose this, how quickly you can get a feature out. Is it like a package that you need to learn a lot? It takes a month, or is it a package that it just takes a few days or maybe a few hours to learn? So another thing was like regarding the performance. The performance here doesn't mean really the performance of the code. It will be that one too, but also the productivity of the team. When you're using a package, are you going to like use some kind of code generation, metaprogramming? Does the package allow that? Does it come with some kind of like dev tools or extra test suites library and etc. and etc.? Which means that are we happy to work with, or then okay, we choose this package, all right, good, but then we need to set up a lot around it to get that to work. And maybe simplicity. Well, that means for the business side, means if it's simple, you can learn fast. So you're squeezing the time. Well, that means squeezing the budget. It's a lot of developers in the team. So the sooner you can get into something, the sooner you can get something out, and that brings more value. And that for the team perspective, the language might be, the complexity of the pattern or the package. Good. So based on all of this, now I could come up with a chart of at least 7 characteristics. When I talked about these characteristics right now, then all people, developers as well as business, they understand what I'm talking about. The first thing, the first package, the first pattern, or the first things that I actually chose for my comparison or choosing for making a decision was set a state, or the built-in feature in the Flutter. Flutter comes, the library, any library that you use probably comes with some kind of native state management support. So I started to look into that. Well, the package or the pattern, because it's built in, the onboarding, learning, it's very simple. So it's a very high stars for simplicity, because everyone knows that. All developers knows this. So it's very simple. It comes with the Flutter SDK already. So if you started with that, you already should know it. It's the first thing you will learn. But is it really scalable? Because then with this pattern, with this built-in state management, then you need to, if you have a lot of applications, you need to pass down to the very bottom of your widget tree the state. And if you want to lift this state up, then it's also taking like a lot of time. Maybe it makes your UI and your business logic very complex and very integrated, coupled. Maybe not very scalable though. But then how actually I came up with these comparison? It's very simple. You don't need to sit and write an application to compare all of these packages. It's just some sample codes that they're providing. We all are, in some application we have done probably, or even if you have not done, but just looking at the sample repositories or codes here and there on GitHub or on their documentation, it's easy to understand what is coming to you naturally. So, and the other factors as well. Like, was it really testable? Yeah, well, Flutter comes with a built-in testing suite, so it's easy to test, but, well, in some cases, it's hard to really maintain that test. All right, so, but then what is this set of state is good for then, based on those characteristics that I could compare and come up with? So, well, maybe it's perfect for ephemeral state. Like if you are managing only one thing in one widget, you want to just maintain only a state in one place, that's the perfect solution for that. And there is nothing wrong to choose 2 different or 3 different state management in one application. So, or maybe it's a very good one for prototyping. So, especially in Flutter, because it gives you an ability to write your code and build your application very fast, to deploy very fast, then probably it's a good idea to use as simple as possible to get your prototyping application out as fast as possible. All right. Another one was, if you are coming to Flutter and research a little bit, the first thing that you will probably face is suggestion in many articles, especially older ones, the package called provider. Provider, together with another feature, change notifier, gives you an ability of doing a state management. However, I want to actually not go through this. The reason is that the author of the package already mentioned that he has created a new package, and he also called this package somehow provider 2, but the name of the package is Riverpod, and he strongly recommends to choose that package instead of this one. Even though if you are going and research, you will find a lot of recommendation, as I said, especially in the older documentation or articles about it. But we're not going to go through that. Instead, we're going to talk about Riverpod, the new provider or the new package that the author of provider has created and is recommending to use. All right. I wanted to actually, this was also quite new to me. This package is quite new as well. Even though I've been developer like for Flutter in more than 4 years, still this package was quite new to me. I wanted to understand if this is a good fit for my application or not, right? So I actually made a little bit of research. I read some codes. I write some codes with Riverpod. And then based on those characteristics, I started to compare that with other packages and also give some rating based on what I am doing with this application right now. I spent some time and I realized that the package is fairly simple, but of course way more advanced than the built-in state management from Flutter. So simplicity decreases. But on the other hand, it's way well maintained. So it comes with test requirements. It comes with all the things that you need for maintaining a package in your application. And it's also coming with scalability in the mind. So give some rating here. And I realized that, all right, so this is a great probably package for most of the applications, especially if they are medium or large. For smaller ones, maybe it's a little bit overkill. If I need to just do a prototype, do it with Riverpod in the beginning, I need some time, or my team needs some time to learn what is going on over there, to get familiar with all the concepts. That's not very probably what I want. Give some rating here. Another one was block. So it comes from that reactive programming approach. and started to looking at this package. I built something with it. I had some experience before. Again, the patterns you need to learn. The package also you need to learn. So block itself is a pattern, and the library is implementing that pattern. So you need to understand both. And fairly complex. Actually, again, the simplicity decreases. And the fact that you need to work with the streams, it also adds the complexity of to this package. All right. But it's highly testable and highly scalable. It's a very good one here. Then I concluded, I gave some rating again to my characteristic. I realized that, okay, I need to give some rating here. And I came up, based on this rating for this particular one, this is probably good for all the applications that are using with streams, or as I said, live data. If you are using some kind of web socket implementation in your mobile application, and there is always a data flow in your application coming and going, perhaps this is a perfect one, especially in larger scale. Then another one was Mobex. Fairly similar to Block, in terms of the category and the complexity and stuff like that. It's a bit easier, but it comes with a feature called code generation. So you can use annotation, and then you have the CLI to help you to generate some code out of the box. And that is very good. But then that comes to a category of a criteria that my team really doesn't want to have it. My team said, yes, well, this is good, this is very simple, maybe it's also good for reactive programming basic and perfect, but we really don't want code generation. Again, there is nothing wrong. If your team loves that, maybe you should more focus on that one. And next one was Redux. It comes from another category, functional programming categories. I deliberately chose some of those packages, narrowing down them from those categories that I mentioned in some slides before. Then the pattern itself, all right, a little bit again complex. You need to understand, you need to educate your team. The developers should understand it. You need to write your application. It comes with some complexity. It comes with some features that the language, the Dart language itself doesn't have those things built in, and it comes with a little bit of boilerplate. So maintenance might not be very easy, or the team might not adopt that very well. But if you have a team of JavaScript developers or web developer coming to Flutter, for example, here must be a good fit, because they know the pattern, they know how it works, they know, this approach probably, they have worked with that before, then the adaptability goes higher in the team. So, these are subject to change, these characteristics, based on my team and based on the application implementation. And the last one was get it with get it mixing. Together, it makes it a perfect choice for those especially who doesn't really want to deal with context in Flutter. So Get-It is a service locator. It's built on top of a service locator idea, so it helps you to inject your dependency very easily to different places. And with mixing, it makes it a very good, state management. So again, some ratings, and now it's time to make a decision. Now I have my characteristic. I chose my list. It's 6 of these packages, at least based on my criteria, based on the category that I categorized, and also based on my application. Now I need to understand, based on these 7 characteristics, which ones are the most important one for me, my team, and the application that we are doing. For us, simplicity and agility, the way that we need to learn the package and we need to quickly do something, because the application was a prototype to demonstrate somewhere and we needed to build it in 2 days, right? So the faster we could get this out, the better for us. All right? Then you may guess right now which one I chose. there is nothing wrong with choosing set state as a built-in feature in Flutter, even though it might come with some complexities later for your application. Like, as I said, everything is a trade-off. But because of those two factors, I found that the best solution for my application. There is nothing wrong with this decision, and no one can tell that you made a wrong decision, because we built the application in 2 days, and we quickly get that out. We demonstrate it to those stakeholders. Here is the fact that I'm going to tell you. You have a lot of options. Narrow it down based on the criteria, but also think about the business. Here is the team drives. What really your team wants. If all the members of the teams, they are agreeing on doing one thing and they say, yeah, let's go with this is better based on that analyze, so then go for it. And also remember that the project is evolving. Today, we're doing this prototype based on set state. Tomorrow, we're going to extend it and scale it. Then we can change it. We can come back, revisit this, and then say, oh, now it's time to implement something else. That is perfect. There is nothing wrong with this as well. So the trades are always changing based on your requirements. But one thing that is important that I want to say here in this talk is state management is only one part of your application. It's not the whole thing. If your application is growing, you know that from the beginning. You don't need to spend a lot of time on choosing a state management, because if you have a good architecture in your application, for example, here a layered architecture, you know that the set state is only one layer, and that could be application layer, for example. So you are separating your concern. You have your presentation or your widget layer somewhere, and then you have your data layer, perfect. And then in the middle, you can actually change it with anything that you want. Today, you can do an application block or whatever. Tomorrow, you will get rid of that because it's only one layer, and then replace it with something else. So maybe architecting your application is something that you need to think if you know that your application is going to grow and scale. And then separate your concerns and make sure that you have those layers or whatever architecture that you have in place properly. So then refactoring, replacing different state management is not a big problem. So what I wanted to tell you today mostly is about the mindset of an architect, or architectural thinking is talking about trades-off. It's talking about the business and team drives. It's talking about the way that you need to extend your knowledge. You need to know, you need to read, you need to be up to date, even though you don't need to be expert on every topics. So in many applications or environment or ecosystems, there are lots of different solutions for one particular problem. Like a state management here in Flutter is one example, right? And of course, you have so many options. That is good. I mean, to my opinion, it's not very bad. The reason is that you have, this shows that how vibrant is this community or this ecosystem. That is good. And then you add some characteristic based on your needs, translate your languages to the language that everyone can understand, and at the end make a decision based on that particular problem at that time, and then take into account that you can change it later as well. All right, based on all of this, now if I ask you a question, I showed you 6 packages, whether you know them before or not, then which one is better? Or later, if I come to you and say, hey, tell me the best state management package for whatever application that you are doing, whether it's Flutter or anything else, what should be the answer? Yeah, of course. That is correct. It depends. What do you want to do? And then you can answer that question. With that said, thank you very much for listening to me. If I talked a little bit fast, I'm sorry for that. So I wanted to convey all the messages that I had. And you can find me on different social media or different places with this handler. So I'm always available to answer any question. All right, very good. Then have a good day.